Folks, welcome to San Rafael, California. Here with one of the stick people and a dear friend, amazing drummer Greg Errico. It's great to see you. Welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Good to be here, Jake.
You know, we just listened to a clip about Peter Erskine talking about you playing on TV shows.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to talk about, because I was under the impression all the time that you were playing live, but you were actually playing to backing track.
Actually, it's an interesting subject, and you're probably the first one that's ever brought it up to speak about it. And a lot of it bothers me in that there's two extremes. We've played, matter of fact, there was at least one Ed Sullivan show out of the three that we did, if not two, that were live. We're playing.
Wow.
And you could hear it. I mean, you could hear the you know, the beat bouncing off the walls and the ambience, you know, I mean, it's live and you can see we're slamming it. But a lot of those TV shows were just like Peter was talking about. We had taped the track and we had to, but this was because of union rules or whatever, you know, or they didn't have an engineer or whatever, couldn't do it live. We had to play to a recording, whether it be the record or we went in the day before and pre-recorded the track, and so we could flip it up a little bit and do it differently than the record. So I'm looking at some of these sometimes and I go, how come no one ever says something about, man, that looks like, it looks really weird. It looks like I'm like...
It's really hard. He said it's really hard. What was he saying it was hard to do?
And the word is not faking it.
Right.
That's not the word to describe. It looks like, it's kind of like indescriptive. It's like, well, you know, he's hitting it on, but something's wrong. It doesn't look natural. It looks like, you know, it doesn't look
it's like
natural.
Faux or something,
it's unnatural looking. It's always bothered me, and no one's ever asked about it. So I never. And then we have some that are very representative, and I'm slamming. I mean, you know, this, you know, even if the thing wasn't mic'd properly, I'm slamming so hard that it's bouncing off all the walls, and it sounds great because you got all this ambient sound, you know, this live sound. It's undeniable. So I'm represented. But there are some challenging ones that it's always bothered me. And this is the first time it's ever been brought up to discuss, and I'm kind of glad. And the ones that don't look natural, yeah, they bother me, but it's not like,
you're not,
I
what
can't
is that
even look
word?
at that.
What is that word, though? You're not faking it. It's just you're not giving it your all. You got to, like,
well, no, I mean,
I'm
playing, you know, and I've always was conscious about, you know, I want to be accurate. I want to represent whatever is happening at the moment. So in this case, if it was we're playing to the record, to the track, you know, and I want to hit like every little nuance, but I can't like slam. I can't do my thing. So I'm just kind of like mimicking, pantomiming, so to speak.
Pantomiming, that's what it is.
What I mean? And for a drummer, it's a physical thing. Pantomime is, you know, in the original sense, it doesn't even belong in the same sentence. But
so just to be clear, though, they couldn't get an engineer to run the board live, so then you had to pre-record it.
I don't know if it was that or union rules. You know, you had to play to a track because that's the contract that they had with the production company or whatever. I mean, there's so many things, and when unions come, you know what I mean? So this is modern age challenges, whether it be the technology, because in the old days, I mean, before TV, you would never, this mindset wouldn't even exist, let alone you had to figure out how to do it. So, where were we?
No, it's fine. I was curious, which guys from the press, print press, gave you a lot of credibility? Like Ralph Gleason. Were there certain writers that wrote about you that gave you sort of some? Because that was really the radio and the newspaper was king back then.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't remember having any being, you know, I always.
I bring up Ralph Gleason just because he would have guys like Cannonball and Dizzy, but he was also writing about Garcia. He was just a music fan.
I've always had pretty good press, and I've kind of always attributed not, you know, anything special, just because I've always been very sensitive to represent. Like I said, represent the moment or whatever, you know. So that's, you know, just the honesty, I guess, paid off. I don't recall any, challenging things or someone gave me, just dissed me. It's always been pretty good.
What would you say was maybe the hardest, or early in your career, something that would have shaken a lot of people? Maybe it shook you a little bit, but it shook you to your core, but you stayed with it and you realized that it was like you were in it for the long haul. I feel like that younger cats specifically, especially, can get, myself included, you can get thrown off by either people writing about you or having people, whatever it is. I mean, everybody sort of has that sort of moment where, do you remember any time where you faced this adversity but you stood tall and
maybe in a different way that you present it.
Yeah.
I definitely remember. I definitely had that early on.
Like in what way?
Just staying with the, just we started this thing. We were on a roll with the group, but this is before we made it or anything. So
you're
it's
young,
only this is just like would be more like personal. Like we would, you get intergroup challenges and stuff, but and I can remember having thoughts of, how do I bail or I stick with this? Commit and go. And I remember those moments, and I've always had decided, no, it's important, even if I didn't understand it yet totally.
Is there an example you could bring up?
Not necessarily. And then I've been fortunate enough to where, I was 14 when I started playing. I was 17 when we started the group. Our whole career was a little bit over 5 years. That whole songbook we created, all the things we did in history. So this is quantum movement. I mean, this is moving fast. And
really
so
fast.
I didn't have like a long buildup of career, where I got to a certain level of career where you have, someone don't understand it yet, so they're, you're being swiped or whatever. It was early, so once we got on that momentum, it was like a cannonball.
Would you just talk to younger cats, like when you would be sitting at home and saying, do I really want to do this?
Yeah.
What would bring you back? The feeling?
Well, let me just address
Go ahead.
challenges with young people, and kind of like, you're going to take something on, and you got to have the passion for whatever it is you're going to do. And
It's all right.
you got to be, and if you have the passion for it, when those challenges come, you say there is no other choice. I love this. This is what I'm going to do. So that word passion covers like a lot of things. You have to have a passion for what you do, and you'll get through those challenges. Whether they've been like over a long career, so you got tens, you got decades of these challenges and wins and successes and losses. For me, my experience was, boom, it happened so quick. There wasn't even time for that, because that was what that time period was about. Things happened, were going like fast, and
But I would also say that passion, and I'm curious about, but you have to also advocate for yourself. Because you have to sing for yourself, or you have to be able to. You can't starve to death.
You have to be, true
can't get
to
ripped
yourself.
off,
And I was fortunate to where it was the right time, right place, and my passion for it, my dedication to it, my desire for not being accurate, but just being true to the moment of creativity. You're going to address whatever those things are, to where the listener in your performance, they're going to go, they're going to connect. They're going to say, the hair stands up on your arm.
Brother Errico, I want to. I've been asking cats this, and Albert Eiler, Archie Shepp. These guys are considered pioneers of the free jazz movement.
Mm-hmm.
Played very free. Didn't play out of the American songbook. You didn't really hear a lot of tradition. You didn't even hear chord changes. It was free. And a lot of the jazzers, a lot of the guys that were playing of the American songbook, maybe not bebop, but post-bop and adding their own vocabulary, they were in competition with those guys for some gigs, and they didn't necessarily respect them. And I just wonder, I wanted to ask you, my point is that at a certain in that time, in the late 60s, there was a certain barometer as it related to being a jazzer. You had to have a deep bag of tunes. You had to play, how big of chops did you have? How much could you swing the tune? Eiler and Shep were saying, no, I don't think that that's the barometer for being a top-level musician. Play from the gut. And I just wanted you to talk about, it doesn't matter what genre, I asked Erskine this the other day too, what are the keys in your mind to being a consummate, not professional, but just a consummate musician?
It's probably more to do with that honesty, and that passion for being accurate to whatever it is you're creating. And if you're doing that, whether you have a repertoire, a songbook you're playing from, or you're just totally free form, which actually I would have to say, and I'm not that familiar with
Me neither.
those guys, because that was just before, I started playing. I was 17 in 1966, and you're talking about probably early 60s.
No, but here's the thing, 69, the Hate Levels, there was a lot of free movement stuff going on with Grinelli and Noel Jukes and those guys.
Well, and
but those guys, the Sheps and those guys were, I'm not sure if they were in the West Coast per se.
And that's a time where there was in the mid 60s, American jazz was huge, probably its biggest point.
Absolutely.
Mid 60s to maybe mid 70s, or even up to the 80s. And I'd have to say,
you were riffing on the freeform thing, though. I wanted you to talk about, in terms of...
I would have to say that these guys that maybe were unpopular, I'm sure they inspired a lot of the cats that maybe had, the gig credit card or whatever. I mean, that freedom.
I dig.
That's what jazz is all about.
Totally.
That's how it was born and developed. And the fact that then you develop songbooks and all that stuff, and create forms and flavors of jazz, it all goes back to the whole mindset was being able to take that and be free with it, not be in a fixed, in any box, or it was like every moment, every day was new, and everybody would have to understand that common thing that you throw something out there, you respond to it, they respond to that, and it's just it just winds up like that.
It just popped into my head. We were talking before about sort of when the lawyers and the bean counters got involved with music. But going back to Sly, especially in the studio, did anybody ever tell you what to play, or did you just play what you felt? Because Louis Hayes, going back to Cannonball, he's like, why? He goes, I would never tell the saxophone player what to play. Don't tell me what to play. I'll play. I'll be fine. And I'm curious about how much creative freedom you had, especially in the studio.
In answer to your question, absolutely not.
Never told you anything.
No.
I love it.
I mean, we could talk about a direction.
Sure.
But as a matter of fact, Sly and I used to have some heated conversations about,
Let me be a fly on the wall for that, dude.
About more this way or more that way, or certain specific thing, if we got into that kind of a conversation. And he'd win, sometimes I'd win. It'd be a toss-up. But his mindset was always very open. And if you talk to any of the guys in the group, they'll tell you the same thing. We always had freedom to bring our interpretation or even inspiration of what was going to happen to the table.
And in the tours, how much was the emphasis on, because really you guys shot up so fast and there were so many radio friendly hits that you guys had, were you able to sort of stretch out from the records themselves, or did you feel like
Absolutely.
You did?
Absolutely.
Because I don't see a lot of live.
As a matter of fact, the band was very well rehearsed in the beginning. As things moved on, we never really had to rehearse really anymore because we were always playing. So
I dig it. I love
putting it together was in real time. We always, especially I was always, we were conscious of bringing any specific song to performance as it was interpreted, as it was heard, as people they expected to hear that record. On the other hand, there were some songs, there were some recordings that you couldn't play like the record. It just didn't work like.
Was there? Can you give an example? Because I don't see it. I try to find a lot of like live Sly.
Higher?
Yeah.
Thank You, the record. Everyday People. Some of them had different levels of bias on it as far as performance to make them work live, and recording chops and live chops, two different things. And we experienced the whole transition of going from playing in a small club and then recording and then making that recording work in the club to now you're getting to bigger venues, and you had to flip it a little. You had to treat it differently to make it work. You're still recording, and our recordings are morphing and coming along and developing and maturing and hitting different levels of what they're saying. And then now you're playing outdoors. There's no environment except for the open air. And the sound systems and production in those days ain't like they are today.
There's no way that you were able to hear yourself.
So, no, it was just a whole different animal. And again, I always fell back on just having the sensitivity to be honest to what you're doing. If you're just creating something, you're improvising, if you're reproducing that recording that everybody wants to hear, so be it. All those things and everything in between. And that worked. That being true to represent to the moment and the consideration of what it is that you're doing always worked. That brought you to if you really hung on to that would bring you to where you're supposed to be to do it, to deliver it, and it works. And that's always worked good for me.
I haven't seen Greg since before the pandemic, and I just wanted to ask you, just talk, especially your when your grandkids get older, how grateful coming out of the pandemic, do you feel like you have more gratitude? I'm curious about I'm always interested in normally I'd ask you about like what's on your, it's amazing how many guys who definitely didn't see this coming. Nobody saw it coming.
Yeah.
But they kind of had their own control of what they wanted to do. And now that there's been this pause, they have like a bucket list of things they want to do.
Yeah.
You've done a lot, but I'm saying more to the point, like, when your grandkids see this in 5 years, what do you want to tell them about, like, how you changed as a person?
Yeah, I don't.
That might be the wrong word. Just go where you want to go.
Changed dramatically, but you made your level of consciously being appreciative to a lot of things where you didn't really maybe express it openly as much before is definitely presence. You have that, and I think when anybody is challenge you, you should gravitate to those things that are most important. And for me, music, creating, family, all those things. It just, I'm blessed that I've had those things. Some people don't. Some people don't.
Well, they don't have as rich a life. That to me, like you have this opportunity now to this huge clan of Erricos. It's like really a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
I feel like you were already pretty much in check. Like you kind of got the memo. I mean, since I've known you, you've always been appreciative of these things. Do you have some kind of musical project that you really want to put out in the ether that was not on the radar before COVID, but now you're like, now I really want to do that.
Well, there's a song that I've written that keeps development
Here we
in
go.
my head.
Yeah.
And you know, it might be more relative now than it was before, but I've always looked at it. It came out of the saying that I have. I go, you know, there's what it looks like, and there's what it really is, and seldom are the two one and the same. And now this song, we used to do. There's a track that we would jam with the Family Stone in opening our sets. That is the track for the story. And I've since went from kind of like just the funky like rhythm track thing to this choir and this pretty sophisticated melody that goes with it.
Oh my!
And this whole arrangement. So I think I'm going to have to
wait, hold on. Was there words to it before? Or was it just a jam? You made or
well, it started with the jam, and then as you know, and this thing is always was bubbling back my head. You know, and this is how most songs start.
I love this, dude.
At some point in time,
merge
it starts to have a shape, and this starts, and you go, oh, well, this belongs with this, you know, or it just starts developing in your head like that. And so yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Hey man, check out the stick, people, and Greg Errico, man. Beautiful day here in San Rafael. So good to see you again, man. Much love and all the best to you. It's the Jake Feinberg Show. See you later.